Today too?
Hey, John. Good to be here.
I think you're on vacation too, and you're taking the time to do this.
I am. I
Well, thank you.
am.
Hey, John, you're good.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second installment of the regional report outs. This is the Southeast region that you're listening to. We'll be here every Tuesday at 4:30. If you want to watch it live, you can also go to the website covid.ks.gov/report-outs. It's covid.ks.gov/report-outs and put in your email address. And we send out a recording of this call via YouTube with the dashboard that we discussed. And so you can watch it or consume it at your time. Encourage you to share that with others and to sign up. If you have questions or comments that you want us to discuss, we got some great feedback after last week. You can email us at ksregionalreport@gmail.com, ksregionalreport@gmail.com, and we'll try and work it into the next call. The format of today's call will be a little different than last week. What I'm going to do, our friends at the Kansas Hospital Association have diligently and generously put together a great dashboard for us. I'll run through that for everybody, and then we'll turn to public health, Destiny, and then the hospitals, with Drew to add any color and kind of life to that as it pertains here to the Southeast region and what they've seen change over the last week. And then we'll pitch it over to Dr. Watson, who will walk us through what they've created, the Cheyenne Mountain Software Company. Dr. Watson practiced in Kansas for a long time, and they've created the Mission Control app, which is helping with the transfers across the state from hospital to hospital. And the data that they're putting together is very helpful to show us kind of the overall how well our healthcare system is able to move patients around, which is a really critical part of how this works. So we'll hear more from him. I also want to throw out one other website before I get to the dashboard. If you are wanting to get tested and trying to figure out where to go, there's a website, gogettested.com/Kansas, gogettested.com/Kansas, and you'll find the testing sites in your area. It's a great resource. We won't have a lot. I'm sure you hear the vaccine mentioned on this call. We don't have a lot of information for you as far as that rollout goes into the public, but we will discuss that as we have that information on these calls. So feel free to tune in week to week to hear more about that as it comes up. All right. Let me see if I can share my screen here for everybody. All right. If I can get nods, Destiny, when you can see it. Okay. So this is the dashboard that goes out. It's on the website. It also goes out in the email package, so you can see what's going on with your region. There are 11 hospitals in the Southeast region. The region was selected as the Healthcare Coalition under KDHE, kind of how our healthcare systems move in Kansas regionally. Of those 11 hospitals, 100% reported. Okay, so of them, how many are expecting critical staff shortages? As we said last week, it's usually staff, stuff, or space that's the issue. Staff has been the main issue the past couple months. So fortunately, this number's down to 27%, still fairly high, that a quarter of the hospitals are expecting staffing shortages this week. Then you can come in and see the number of COVID patients that are in. If it's the reason we have confirmed or suspected is generally it's believed they're waiting for test results to come back. How many are in ICU? And then the ICU bed and ventilator situation in the region. Fortunately, a lot of ventilators available. That's not been an issue this time around. 9 patients on vents and 4 deaths this week, unfortunately. And when you come to adult staffed ICU beds, there's 32 adult staffed ICU beds in the region. And the reason we say adult staffed is a non-staffed ICU bed is just a bed. And so you can see that there's 12 available in the region, which is 38%. I tell you, this is a snapshot in time. This number is dynamic, not only day to day, but in hour to hour. Oftentimes, as patients get better and move out or are transferred in and around as they need more care. So just know that we had to pick a point in time, and this is yesterday's number, and we're grateful to the Hospital Association for putting that together. Then when you look on the next part of the dashboard, you can see the number of new cases each week in the region. This is a concerning graph, I'd say, for the Southeast region here. As you can see, coming into September and October, somewhere around 300 or more cases. As we came into November, that spiked up, to triple the numbers that were there in the beginning of October, and it's only gone up from there in December to where this past week 1,400 new cases of COVID. And this is probably, of the 7 regions, this is the most concerning uptick that we've seen. A lot have plateaued, and Western Kansas has gone down a little bit as they've stepped up their vigilance out there. So I'm sure Destiny and Drew will speak to that also. The second page of this dashboard, you can see county by county the number of residents in the population that have tested positive for each county in the region. And then you can also see over on the right a pie chart kind of showing who's taking up the beds. It's important just to understand that obviously the COVID pandemic and the number of patients impacts all of healthcare, non-COVID too, your strokes and your heart attacks and your car accidents. As the system becomes clogged, it impacts what's available for them from a transfer situation or available, near their home. So that is this dashboard. I wanted to run through it really quickly for everybody so you knew what you were looking at. And I will pitch it over to Destiny now to give an update what's going on the public health side. Destiny.
Yeah, hi. I'm Destiny Wheeler. I'm with the Wilson County Health Department. And like John said, I'm representing the Southeast region of the state. Again, like the dashboard shows, our numbers continue to not look good. We've seen since Thanksgiving several, at least at my health department, family groups of positive cases as because of the get-togethers. So I think most health departments in the region are kind of anticipating a similar surge in like whole families a couple week and a half after Christmas, just because of the get-togethers. It's been an exciting week in public health. We got some vaccine, which we are very excited about. Health departments in the region got Moderna vaccine. We are working through the logistics of how to make that work. This vaccine comes in 10-dose vials. So once you puncture the vial, it has to be used in 6 hours. So we, not all of us have 10 people in a group that necessarily want the vaccine. So we're trying to kind of mix and match groups because we are not going to waste a drop of it. So so that's really kind of been our push this week, is to get the logistics of that straight. And we're working really hard with our hospitals and FQHCs to get that vaccine in the right places as far as the tiers. And I won't go into that or anything like that, but we are having a lot of interest in the vaccine, which is exciting. I hope that continues when it's available to the public. The testing situation, we are, the statewide testing plan is rolling out these free testing sites, which is great. We have 3 in our region right now, with plans for 1 more that I've been informed of. And then we have 1 community site. It's an EMS barn that's actually doing free testing. So that's pretty exciting. We know that it's really important to get these tests, positive cases identified more quickly, and having free testing is really important, because some of these tests are pretty expensive, and we have a decent amount of uninsured adults that can't afford to necessarily get these tests. Just a little color from what we're hearing, the folks that need to get back to work really quickly are the people that aren't necessarily provided insurance through their jobs. So these free testing sites, PCR tests allow them to get out of quarantine 3 days quicker, which allows them to get back to work as long as they're asymptomatic. And so I think that is going to be a huge benefit to that working population that isn't provided insurance and maybe can't afford those expensive tests through labs or through the hospital labs. And you already mentioned the Go Get Tested website. I was going to mention that as well. And I talked really fast, so I think I'm done really quickly.
You know, you did great. You covered a lot of ground and made some really important points. So I appreciate it. And I'll just add a little color around the vaccine just so you guys can understand how it works out there who are listening in. The Pfizer vaccine, you get your first shot, then it's 21 days later, you get your second shot, and it's 2 weeks later that you're considered fully immunized as your body reacts and builds up that change that is needed. And so the Moderna one that she's talking about has a 28-day window between the two shots. So it's 5 to 6 weeks before, from the time someone takes their first shot before they're immunized. And it's really a miracle that they got this vaccine figured out as fast as they have. And the fact that it's produced and starting to go out to these frontline workers and places is wonderful. And like I said, as we have information that comes to us from KDHE about how to access the vaccine, we will mention that here on these regional report out calls so you can hear how you can get it. But we're grateful for that it's coming in and starting to be doled out, and we do not want to waste any of it, which I love that point, Destiny. Let me pass it over to Drew. Drew, thanks for coming on to us. I know you're coming to us on a day off here, and we appreciate that. Can you give us some color from the hospital side?
Sure, and certainly good to be with y'all. Certainly the region's report is not all that positive as we see the COVID positive continuing to rise in our region. I think we've got some really good news to share, and I appreciated hearing from Destiny that the county health departments are beginning to receive their doses. Obviously, as far as what our region needs is start getting these vaccines in the hands of the patients and those who are at greatest risk. So that's very exciting. I agreed with your dashboard report, particularly around the concerns for staffing for a couple of reasons. As we know, our concerns around staffing really follow the census that we're experiencing. And as we reported last week, we were experiencing an awful lot of high census overall in the hospital, and particularly in the COVID positive population. So the other thing is we're seeing, not unlike the region, more and more of our staff beginning to be affected by the virus. And so that puts fewer resources at our disposal. But I've got some good news for us. In addition to being able to approach the vaccines from a patient-facing standpoint, we're seeing over what I reported last week, some declines in COVID positivity on the inpatient side. And we think that has at least something to do with the monoclonal antibody programs that we have going at Pittsburgh. We've administered about 30 doses so far. And, we've seen our COVID positive population almost cut in half, maybe a little bit more at the moment. And so we're really excited about that. We also received our vaccines about a week ago, and we have delivered about 30% of those doses. We expect to deliver another 30%, and then over the next week and a half, should be able to deploy the remaining half of our allocation. It has been a little bit surprising to me, and I'd be interested to see what Destiny's seeing as well, how many folks are declining the vaccine. And we're kind of trying to go back and reinvigorate our own employee population to get them to take the virus or the vaccine. I think it's very important for people to evaluate their own personal risk factors. But having experienced the virus myself, I know I'm going to do everything I can to avoid having a second exposure or having this virus twice. So again, we're reaching back out. We have been lucky that we haven't had any adverse reactions to it. And I'm hoping that the employee population will come back around and choose to take the virus. But with that, we're also seeing that our allocation is going a little bit further, both because of the declinations and because we're getting a little bit more of the vaccine out of each vial that we open. Not quite a full dose, but almost a full dose. And so that gives us a little bit more coverage. We've been able to expand the folks that we initially were targeting, which was the patient-facing population of our associates, and we've expanded on to the rest of our employee population. So we're very excited that we're ahead of schedule in getting it to all employees, all doctors. So that's an exciting place for us to be as well. And I feel like, Destiny, I got kind of running there downhill, and I think that's most of what I've got, but I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions.
That's great, Drew. And I'll pitch it over to Dr. Watson, let them lay out, and then maybe we can have conversation once we've got it all down there. But that's a good report. And I've heard several people say I've seen several people die from COVID, and I haven't seen anybody die from the vaccine. So I'll take my chances that way. So Dr. Watson, why don't you walk us through the software and what you're seeing, just so people can understand. You come into rural critical access hospital. If there's severity or acuity, as it's called, in your disease, you get rung up the chain to where there's more resources and specialization. And so you move to a regional hospital and then up into generally one of the hospitals in a major metro. And so that's the transfer. And then as you get better, a lot of times you get transferred closer back to home for your own care. And so Mission Control, Dr. Watson practiced here in Kansas for a long time and is one of the founders of this software that's helping measure those times. And their data is important because it really starts to show us where that transfer, where they're starting to get clogs in the system. So Dr. Watson, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, it's great. An old PSU grad here, and actually staffed the ER at Fort Scott for a while, and a lot of roots in Southeast Kansas. A lot of good thoughts about Chicken Annie's and Mary's. So no worries. That's all good. You know,
John, could you make me the presenter real quick so I can share my screen?
We look at broad brushstrokes and particularly very pragmatic about helping facilities. I mean, our job is totally to take the workload off of these smaller hospitals. And we look at numbers in the states off of the numbers provided by KDHE, and we see very similar. I mean, the graphs that we put together look like everyone else's. We've seen numbers like we've never seen this year in any other time in the pandemic. And I think particularly as we went into November, the rate of increase caught everyone a little off guard about how fast it built to a critical level and then just stayed there. And while we think there's a plateau there, I think certainly Southeast Kansas feels that is not necessarily the case. You're still fighting the fight, and as is everybody else. Although there's some idea that there may be a peak and a decrease, reality is we're still at levels like we've never seen before. The red are hospitalizations, the blue positive cases, the blacks are deaths, and it's just a reflection of what everybody knows in the system to begin with. We track hospitals broadly. We don't try to replicate what's in some of the other databases. We want to know is there capacity in the system. And we look at traditional tier 1 hospitals that would be the traditional referral centers. And then we also look at the secondary referral centers, people who might not be considered a place to send a patient, but because of the situation we're in, we're accessing every bed that we can access, and it's possible to move people up and down the chain so that we're taking advantage of places that are not so critical and have availability. We're accessing 4 states, 5 states around, working with Nebraska, actually a lot of requests from Oklahoma, Texas, and other states. And we've really had to focus on Kansas first, obviously, certainly in that 4-state area down in the corner of the state. I mean, there's a lot of movements, Pittsburgh to Freeman, all around into Tulsa. We know that very well. We track the data related to this and can get down to individual facilities and where their patients are coming and going. But Jesse, if you'd walk through just broadly the type of data we're able to track in this system.
Yeah, so Mission Control it's a web-based SaaS application available to any hospital in the state. And if any of the viewers or people on the call be interested in learning more, just send an email to contact@cheyennemountainsoftware.com. So data that comes out is in every 2 hours refreshed onto this dashboard. This data is available to facilities using the software for their transfers. A couple highlights here. This is looking at the last 30 days. You'll see here our COVID positive or COVID presumed rate is just under 40%. And then the number of facilities that are requesting assistance locating a receiving hospital for their patient is about 35% right now. So these are hospitals that say, I need to move this patient up the continuum of care. I do not have a receiving facility secured and would like assistance locating one. We leverage the other screen that you saw, as well as some other data sources, to help those senders identify potential receivers and make that connection so that they can have that call between providers. Time metrics here in the bottom left corner. This median request to arrive is the amount of time from when that record hits our database to when a responding crew is marked as arrived at that facility. So we tend to normally like to see that substantially below 1 hour. As you'll see, it's at 1 hour 18 right now. But as we then toggle on requests that needed assistance finding a bed, a big significant jump in the amount of time that a patient is waiting at that sending facility for a responding unit to show up. You'll also see then the percentage goes up from 40% or 38% without bed assistance to those requesting bed assistance. COVID jumps to 63%. Speaking to obviously the saturation we're seeing in those receiving facilities. Also, if we look at this as the COVID false, you'll see that time metric jumps from 230 or 234 up to just under 3 hours. So again, these are non-COVID patients where the sender is having difficulty finding a receiving hospital. So these are the strokes, the MIs, sepsis, the other time critical diagnosis that are important to get moving, are having a difficult time finding a receiving hospital.
Jesse, let me interrupt you just real quick too. So this is real data from the last 30 days in Kansas. And I want to make sure I'm reading it right. So that 3 hour number, the 2 hours and 56, that's for the group that's going to transport to get to the hospital where the patient's at. And then it's another 2 hours and 9 minutes to get to where they're going to receive the care. So you're really looking at 5 hours and 10 minutes. Yeah. Okay.
Correct. And, pulling out just an example here, Setanta, this hospital here, they had a patient that they needed assistance finding a bed. It was COVID false. And let me make sure I'm slicing this right. There we go. And COVID false, needed bed assistance. We have a GI bleed, it looks like, most likely. That takes 5 hours and 47 minutes to locate a receiving hospital, and then another 2:35 to move the patient. Ended up having to fly them to KU in an airplane to receive what would normally be an easier transfer to a more central or localized receiving hospital for that facility. So
but generally, I think you said in an earlier call, it'd take less than an hour usually to find that place.
Yeah, to have that responding crew show up at that sending facility. Correct. And obviously geography, weather, topography at times can impact some of this, but we're just seeing that extraordinary strain on the system right now, and want to continue to stress, one, go to the hospital if you need medical care, and two, just hats off to all the facilities, both sending and receiving, for what they're doing to care for patients right now. It's really been a tremendous amount of work, and hopefully we can be part of that solution for all the outlying facilities, where we can be an extra set of hands for their team to remain patient focused, not working telephones to try and find receivers.
Thank you. Yep. Dr. Watson, anything you want to add as a wrap up on that?
No, it's just it's an amazing time, and hopefully we'll get through these 2 holidays and get on the backside of this. I think we're all very hopeful about the next few months being very different from the last few months.
Don, just a quick comment from my perspective.
Absolutely.
You brought out the transfer time, and while it's not insignificant, what we find is our providers are certainly creatures of habit, and they go to the places where they've had luck in taking patients, and it's a relatively short list of resources that they go to. A more exhaustive list demonstrating capacity, I think, would be tremendously valuable at this time when we're really struggling with our area hospitals to be able to take additional patients. So certainly applaud the efforts here in making this information available, and I think it could be really, really useful.
Thanks. And again, working really hard to make it something that's valuable to these outlying hospitals. And actually, I've seen a lot of Pittsburgh on the board at times. That's good and not good, but I appreciate the fact that we're able to help. So.
No. Well, thank you for highlighting this. I'll ask, Destiny or Drew, do you guys have any other comments you want to say before I wrap it up?
No, it's just, it's nice to know that resources like this are emerging. And I know our ER docs have been pretty exasperated by not being able to get some of the patients, in our hospital. There are certain things that we do not have. And a patient that is in renal failure, we don't have a nephrologist. Finding a place to send them, even though they may be COVID positive, is really critical in achieving the outcome we want for them. So again, I think this is a great tool.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody for taking time on this holiday week and a time when you guys are already so busy to be committed to this, to getting the information out to your region. And excited of the bright spot of the hope, the injection of hope that this vaccine begins to represent. As a reminder, still not a time to take the foot off the pedal. As cases continue to surge, the vaccine really won't be putting a dent in anything for a few months. And so, really the choices we make as individuals are impacting our communities. And that's been certainly a theme. You guys have my favorite bright spot. We like to end every call with a bright spot, catching people doing something right. And the Northwest region didn't have one, so I used yours there. That's how much I liked it. And the Humboldt Police Department normally does a Toys for Tots drive this time of year. They decided, the people that needed some love were the grandparents in the community didn't have family nearby. And so, or family could visit because of COVID. And so they did an adopt a grandparent program. They found 73 grandparents that needed adopted and put it out there on Facebook. Their police chief, and I appreciate Cole Herder for sending this to us on the email, because I would have missed this story. But people from Florida, Texas, Arkansas, Nebraska, and all across Kansas adopted these grandparents and provided presents and cookies and all these things that the police department's going to go deliver. So just a great example of, these are hard times, but we all have a choice to bring kindness and generosity and light into these times. And it's great to see the people in Humboldt and the police department inviting others into those acts of generosity and kindness in their community. So on that, we'll wish you a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas. We'll be back this time next week, 4:30 on Tuesday, just to hear what's going on in your region with your system. Thank you to everybody who participated, and I wish you a wonderful week. Have a wonderful Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.